Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 7:30 in the morning here, Thursday morning, March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, Calgary, Alberta. I'm glad to be here. This is One Child Abuse Survivor to Another. Sorry about that. I missed my show this morning and slept in past 2 alarms, and I'm off today, actually, and so I was able to reschedule the show. So, unfortunately, sorry about that. I have done that a few times, probably about 5 times. I've actually slept through my shows, so sorry it's on so early in the morning that sometimes I do turn off my alarms. So I thought, well, I'll do the show now, and so thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it, and sorry for all those people who are waiting and waiting for the show to start. And we're going to continue looking at this dysfunctional families from the Mudrashram Institute of Spiritual Studies from George A. Boyd. George A. Boyd wrote this article in 1992, but it's really good information regarding dysfunctional families. And right now we're looking at boundaries, at what are boundaries and how important it is to set boundaries. If many people growing up in dysfunctional homes, they don't get to learn how to develop healthy boundaries, and it's really important that we do this for ourselves as adult survivors of child abuse, and also for people who may have grown up in dysfunctional homes where the boundaries were crossed and there were no really healthy boundaries. So this is an interesting article for me. I'm learning a lot out of it and getting a lot out of it, so hopefully everyone else is too. So thanks for tuning into my shows. I appreciate it. Not a counselor or a therapist. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my blog talk shows, mainly because I want to be another voice out here, speaking out against abuse and standing up for child rights, talking about abuse and the seriousness of abuse, and also just another voice for survivors. So that's why I'm doing my shows. And so you have to listen at your own discretion to all of my shows. I'm talking about abuse. Abuse is a sensitive subject. I've had to live with it my whole life, so I don't mind talking about it. I didn't like to be abused when I was a child or a teenager, but I didn't like what it did to my family. But I've had to live with it my whole life, so I don't mind talking about it. So, if you feel that the topic of abuse might bother you, then you have to turn the show off. It is ultimately your discretion to listen to this show. So you have to know what's comfortable for you to listen to and what might bother you. And so if the topics of abuse might bother you, then you need to turn my show off. That is your discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my show from an adult like parent or caregiver, someone who can listen to the show with you to see if it's something that you should be listening to age appropriately. Because I'm just not sure how young the people are who are listening to my show, right? So thanks, everybody. We'll just get right into this topic. And hopefully my show is streaming a little bit better than the last few shows have been just horrible for the connection on Blog Talk Radio. I'm not sure if it's Skype or what, but I have to use Skype to do the shows because I can't afford the long distance. And so, the connection has not been very good, so I'm not sure why, but every now and then the shows the sound quality is horrible. So hopefully you can hear me, and otherwise, I'm not sure what I'll have to do about it. I don't think there's anything I can do about it. We'll just get right into the show here. So we left off talking about boundaries, and George A. Boyd said, this is from www.mudrashram.com, MUDRASHRAM, mudrashram.com /dysfunctionalfamily2.html. And George A. Boyd says, none of this is easy as far as, setting boundaries and getting over growing up in a dysfunctional or abusive home, right? He says, but the experience of numerous people who have survived growing up in these families and have embarked upon a program of recovery let us know that it is possible to regain their sanity and peace of mind despite their painful and abusive past. And he says here, we also know that if an adult who grew up in these types of families does not address these powerful and poignant issues, it is likely that he or she will unwittingly continue these patterns of abuse into a new generation. And so that's kind of where we left off. He says here, the child who's a victim of incest or molestation may go on to molest his or her own children. The victim of physical violence may beat or neglect his or her own children. The child of an alcoholic or drug addict may become chemically addicted to him or herself at a rate up to 4 times that of population who did not grow up in these families. And the child of an authoritarian parent may perpetuate the cycle of tyranny, passing on intolerant and repressive values to his or her children. So this is where we kind of left off. He says familial transmission does not stop unless we break the pattern and find a way to heal the wounds that have been inflicted upon us and resolve that we will not repeat the past, not in our lives, not in our children's lives. And so that's just the issue. We were talking about that on Tuesday morning. And it's very important that we don't pass on that cycle of abuse because we were abused. Because that's that excuse. I'm always talking about this on my show. That my mom was like always, crying the blues because she was abused as a child. And she didn't like the way that she was brought up. She didn't like what her mother had done to her or her own siblings or these orphans that were living in the home for a while. And so she used to cry the blues and complain about the abuse that she suffered as a child when she was feeling down, which was quite often. My mother was manic depressive and was being abused by my dad, so she was always unhappy and miserable, and sometimes talking about suicide, actually quite often, and talking about she should have just killed herself and all this. So she was seriously hurting. She was seriously wounded, but she wouldn't get any help, and she didn't realize, I think, that, she could get any help. It's the same situation I went through until I was 41, which is about 4 years ago. I didn't realize that I could change my mind. I didn't realize that I didn't have to live, in this dark world, in this place that was just going to be misery, and discomfort, and that I could learn how to heal. But it was going to take me to do it. Nobody else can do it for me. So she didn't realize that, and she was a miserable woman until the day she died. So absolutely horrific that she would spend her life like that. That's why I'm so thankful that I finally realized it was going to have to be me, and that I was going to have to do something about it if I wanted to have a good life, right? So we can't pass that cycle of abuse on, because my mother used to complain about being abused, and then she would abuse me, and she would beat on me, and sometimes until I was bloody, right? And you would think that if you hurt your child like that, you would feel so bad. You would be like, oh my God, look what I just did to my child. Like, this is horrible. Oh my God. And you'd be trying to get your child some help, and you'd be like trying to help your child, clean up from the beating or something. My mother was never ever apologetic, and always made me clean up after the beating, and always, left me to my own demise, right? So she did not care, right, that what she had done to me, right? And she had no intention on apologizing or, saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I know better, I was abused as a child, so I know I shouldn't do this to you. She had so much hatred in her heart for life and for her family. And she used to say, I just hate this family. I hate my husband, I hate my children. She couldn't find any good stuff. She couldn't find anything that made her happy within this family. So having these children just were not what it was going to be for her. It's like, she couldn't find that we were worth it to her, that we made a difference in her life, So she passed the cycle right on down to us, even knowing that it was wrong, because she would cry the blues that she was abused, right? Oh, I was abused as a child. So that's that whole cycle of abuse, excuse me. And, we can't pass that on. It is our responsibility as adults. If you're a survivor of abuse, all of us survivors of abuse of any type, need to make sure that we don't carry on that cycle to people around us, especially family members and people who are close to us, because they're at the mercy of of where we are. You know what I mean? Whether you have children in the home or you have other people in your life that you take out your stress and anger on, it's not their fault. So it was not our fault that my mother was in this abusive marriage, and it was not our fault that she was abused as a child, but she took it out on us. So she passed that cycle on, and then felt justified about it because she was a victim, quote unquote, always a victim. Oh, well, look at what happened to me, and not even thinking about the fact that she nearly killed me a couple of times, and really spiritually killed me, tried to destroy me from the day I was born, and didn't care, So that's the issue. We can't do that. Like, if we can't repeat the past. We cannot take on those behaviors and then carry them on in our adult lives. If we do, we are just as guilty as the people who abused us. And I realize that because I do a lot of thinking, as obviously as people know. And so, I thought, hey, I can't justify doing the same things my mother did, or my dad did to me, in my own life, and call it okay, because it's not okay. And what they put on me was wrong. But I need to learn how to not pass that on, and I need to learn how to deal with it. And that sometimes, for whatever reason, some people can do self-help. I'm doing self-help, and it's working out really well. But some people can't do self-help, but they need a counselor, they need a therapist, they need group support, they need somebody, right, to help them get through this, right? So you do whatever you have to do, but you make sure that you don't hurt yourself or somebody else in the process. And, it is ultimately our responsibility. And we can't, like I complained a lot about my brothers because two of my brothers killed themselves, really. One committed suicide, and another one died of a drug overdose. But he knew the pills would kill him eventually, right? He was just taking bagfuls of pills and overdosing all the time. So, and ending up in prison and everything else, right? I mean, he was just on a road to destruction. So, he's just killing himself. He did kill himself. It was a slower death, that's all. And he, I complained about the fact that, I blame my parents for that. I say, well, look at what my parents did to them, that caused them to not have the ability to live, which is really what happened. But it was my brother's responsibility to get help. So in that regard, they, as adults on this planet, had every opportunity to reach out and get some help. Many times people would try to help my brothers, and they wouldn't. They were just like my mother, see. They wouldn't accept that help, and they wouldn't accept the fact that they needed to take responsibility for their adult lives. And so at the age of 21, I finally started doing that. I didn't start my healing journey until I was 41, 20 years later. But I did get off the drugs. I was a heavy drug user until I was 21, headed down the road to destruction. I was destroying my body, I was destroying my mind, and I was destroying my life, right? I figured, well, my parents started me on this road of destruction, tried to destroy me, and so I'll just finish the job. That was what was in my heart, pure anger and a whole lot of negativity towards life, And so at the age of 21, when my brother killed himself, I realized, oh my God, I'm headed down the same road. And if I don't get off the drugs, I'm going to end up the same way, if I don't change my lifestyle, basically. So I had to change my lifestyle. I did that, and it took me about 4 years to really feel good about things, It was about the age of 25. Then at the age of 29, I moved to Canada. A whole lot of dysfunction between my mother and myself. We still could not relate, and we had no real relationship, you know what I mean? From the abuse that she had done me as a child, we never really did reconcile. And I moved to Canada shortly after she died. But moving to Canada was another suicide mission. I was planning on committing suicide up here. So this is the issue. I didn't move up here for a better life. I moved up here to get away from everybody that I knew so I could disappear. And in the back of my mind thinking, well, that's all right. I can complete my mission up here in Canada. Nobody will know. And it won't hurt the family because they won't know what happened to me. I'll just disappear. And so, this is the issue. My mind, that's how my mind worked because my parents put that on me. My parents were suicidal, and people in the family were suicidal, and that was just my life. I mean, I was, we were really trained in the arts of suicide and destruction, right, by my parents. So I'm so glad that I have managed to stick around long enough to the age of 41 to decide to make a clear choice and a commitment to myself that would, at the age of 41, was the last time that I would ever think about killing myself. And I'm 4 years into my healing journey, and the commitment was really, really solid. Like I haven't done that since because I've made a commitment to live and to allow myself to heal. It's very important that we do not go on and repeat the past that our parents put on us or the abuser, whoever the abuser was, right? So if you're dealing with this, and you're a survivor, it is ultimately up to us to make these things happen, and people can't do it for us. And that's what I was waiting for. I was waiting for somebody to come along and help me, to get over this stuff without realizing that I was going to have to be the one to do it, right? It's a serious, serious issue, and I wish I would have figured this out in my 20s. I really do. It's too bad it took me to the age of 41 to figure it out. But I'm still learning. I'm still on my healing journey, but I'm still very much committed that I'm going through to the end, and I'm going to have a good life because what it does is it allows me to win this battle that my parents had started with me before I was even born. They destroyed my life as a child, but they couldn't destroy me now. They couldn't destroy me. So I win this fight, see, and that's an awesome feeling. Because to know that they could not do what they did to some of my siblings, which was to really destroy them. And so, I win this fight, right? This is my victory. And so I'm going to have a good life. I'm going to go on and heal and enjoy this life and enjoy there's some hard days in between and there's some bad days in between, but The majority of it is good because I've surrounded myself with awesome people, and boundaries is a huge issue for survivors of child abuse or in dysfunctional families and whatnot. And this next portion of this article is really quite interesting. And George A. Boyd from this www.mudrashram.com says, exercise setting your personal boundaries. So it's very important that we learn how to do this if you haven't learned this, right? I know that myself, I'm still learning how to do this, right? But it's very important that we do. And he says here, I'm just reading from the page, you define your personal boundaries by zones of emotional space around you, and they vary with the degree of personal intimacy with which you relate to other people. Acquaintances are those individuals that you let into your public space. Friends are those whom you let into your private space. And close friends are those whom you let into your intimate space. And only those individuals who come closest of all, a spouse, the dearest and most trusted of friends or relatives, or your life companion, are ever allowed to enter into your most intimate space. And so he says, with each progressive layer of intimacy, you apply different standards to what is required of an individual to earn the right to know you in a more intimate way. To protect your privacy, to ensure your safety, you erect barriers to those who would come close to you. And only those that earn your trust and pass your tests are ever granted the right to move to the deeper layers of intimacy. So it says, through betrayal or disillusionment, people can be exiled from a more intimate layer to a less intimate layer, and thus close friends of one day may become friends or acquaintances of another. And so he's got this little, like a figure, and there's a little chart, and with a circle, and it's a diagram, and there's some little boxes with some comments. Your intimate space, that's being the circle. Your close friends, the next circle. Your friends, which is the next layer, and then your acquaintances, the outer layer. So it's a set of circles. And it says, in this exercise, first list on a separate sheet of paper those individuals in your life who fall into each of these intimacy categories in the figure of one above. So when you go to this website, you can check this out, www.mudrashram.com/dysfunctionalfamily2, the number 2.html. And so you're supposed to follow this little exercise here and set out where individuals fall, whether they're your intimate friends, whether they're your close friends, whether they're your you've got your most intimate space, right? Close friends, your friends, and acquaintances. So people do, I guess, fit into these four categories, right? And next, observe what your standards and rules are for allowing a person to be an acquaintance, a friend, a close friend, or your nearest and dearest. And then write these down on the second sheet of paper. So what are the standards and rules? So what kind of rules are we going to, what kind of standards are we going to set? How are we going to let people treat us? That's the issue. And these are the rules and the standards by which we set these boundaries. And when you're abused as a child or growing up in a dysfunctional home, many times, obviously the children in the home, if they're not being shown healthy, proper boundaries, and boundaries are being crossed, then we don't have, as an adult, may not have a good, clear idea what boundaries really are and how to set them, even how to have a healthy boundary, in our lives where we would not allow certain things to happen, like we would not allow someone to abuse us. That's why so many survivors of abuse go on to be re-victimized as adults, right? End up in being re-victimized, abused as a child, and then end up allowing themselves to be abused as an adult because they don't know how to set boundaries, and they may not even realize that they're doing that. They may not even snap that that's inappropriate, that we should not allow people to abuse us, and that it's not right, and that we do have rights. We do have the ability to allow people to come into our life and to not allow people to come into our life. We don't have to let every single person come into our life. If they're going to hurt us and they've already proven themselves to be that type of person where they're abusive or they're controlling or they're just going to cause us grief, well, then we don't have to let them in, right? So that's the issue. But a lot of times when children are abused, they have to put up with whatever's, obviously. Almost every time a child's being abused, they're having to put up with whatever the abuser is dishing out, right? And so, and that's for every type of abuse I'm talking. So, then as an adult, many times we don't know how to say no. We don't even know that we should. And so many times adult survivors are re-victimized as adults, right? And I made a clear decision a long time ago that I was actually an aggressive type, so I told myself that I was not going to allow anybody to abuse me ever again. It was bad enough I had to put up with that from my parents, but I was not going to put up with it from friends or from boyfriends, intimate relationships, right? Well, because I had allowed that with friends, close friends. And so not only was I abused as a child, but also some of my friends' boyfriends, one of my friends' boyfriends was highly jealous because of my relationship with my best friend, and he was abusing her, so I tried to protect her, and then he would beat me up and literally slam me into walls and threaten my life and this type of stuff, right? And so, I was just trying to protect my best friend, and she wouldn't leave this abusive relationship because it was one of those situations where domestic violence and abuse, she was used to it, she grew up in it, she was abused as a child herself, and she was just going to stay in this relationship and allow this guy to kill her, which he was attempting to do on a regular basis. So it was absolutely horrific. Then they had a child, and that child got in the middle of it. The whole thing was absolutely insane. This was before it was right around the age of 21 years old. And, I was allowing these people to continue this abusive mess. You know what I mean? And I thought, why am I doing this? I was already abused as a child. I was so tired of violence and so tired of abuse. And I thought, here now I've got to deal with my friend's boyfriend because, she won't leave this relationship, and I'm, trying to help save her life. And she knows she needs to get out for the sake of her child. But yet she's going to stay and allow him to batter her and bash her head in and send her to the hospital and you know what I mean, try to kill her on a regular basis. The guy was highly abusive. Well, he was abused as a child, no excuse. So the issue is he was just a violent man, and he needed serious help. And my friend was abused as a child as well. He grew up in a dysfunctional family with a lot of abuse and domestic violence, and she needed some serious help. So those two were just exactly like my parents. So basically, I created this world for myself as a young adult, choosing people who I would hang around, who I would hang around with, and they were the same picture of my parents, abusers, right? So I was like, why am I doing this? Why I cannot hang out with these people anymore? Finally, about the age of 21, I said, no, that's it. I've got to change my life. I don't want any more of this. I don't want any more violence. I'm tired of being punched in the face. I'm tired of being beaten on. I'm tired of being slammed around into walls. This has been happening to me my whole life. When is it going to end? Well, when I start making good choices on who I allow in my life, right? And so as an adult, right, as a child, we can't help it. We're just forced to endure whatever we're put through. But when we're adults, we don't have to allow that. We can say, no, I want to be treated with dignity. I want to be treated with respect because I'm going to give respect, so I want respect. And I'm going to be a person who can treat people with dignity, so I want dignity. I want good people in my life who are going to care about me and not hurt me. That I never had as a child, right? So that's what I clearly made that choice as soon as I realized what I was doing, and I thought, man, I'm no longer going to allow anybody in my life that doesn't show that they care for other people too, not just me, because that's a good example. How somebody treats their other friends is a really good example of how somebody will treat you. You know what I mean? Like if you meet somebody and they're really bad to other people, they're obnoxious and rude to their other friends, you guarantee they're going to be rude to you. And, if you meet somebody who's really good to their friends and just a nice person, chances are they're going to be nice to you too. They're going to be looking at you the same way. How do you treat your friends? You know what I mean? What kind of person are you? And so we have to really be very, very careful who we allow in our lives, and also what we're going to allow them to do and how we're going to allow them to treat us. And that's this boundary setting. It's very important. And how close we're going to let some of these people. Like I've gone public with my story, and it's mainly because I want to be a public voice speaking out about the damages and the issues of child abuse, and then adult survivor issues. But I'm very, very picky about who I let get very close to me. You know what I mean? Because no one really truly knows is that intimate with me unless I allow them to be. So even these shows, as much as intimate as they are, there's still part of me that is so much further in that intimate circle that most people have not got to see. You know what I mean? Because I only allow people, my closest friends, to see that. And so, that's the whole issue. I mean, I'm giving away a part of myself that I feel is okay, and because it's for public advocacy, and also it's part of my healing journey, and I don't mind sharing it. But there's a lot of stuff that that is very much intimate around my circle that only certain people would see. And so, I still have these boundaries set. And so it's very important that we do. We have to do that. We have to set boundaries and learn how to do it. I was talking on a show, I think it was on Tuesday, or it was probably Tuesday morning when I was talking, saying that my sister doesn't know how to set boundaries. She just has no idea that she needs to set boundaries. You know, she's a good person, you know, and that's her problem. She's a really good person. She's super, super nice, and so therefore, what happens to her is she gets taken advantage of very quickly because she doesn't know how to say no. She doesn't know how to think of her own needs as well. She just thinks of everybody. She's codependent. So she puts everybody else's needs before her own and ends up getting hurt many, many times because she doesn't sit there and say, what do I need out of this relationship, whether it's a friend or whether it's a coworker, whether it's a boyfriend, right, or a husband, right? She doesn't know how to set these boundaries and doesn't even know she should, right? But she won't talk to me, so we don't talk, right? So that's the whole issue. The only thing she wants to talk to me about is shopping, and I'm just tired of that. You know what I mean? Like, I want a little bit more intimate relationship with my sister, so I have cut her off because she cannot be a real person with me. She can't sit down and talk about the stuff, the real stuff in life. She's in denial, see? So I can't hang out with her because she's in denial, because she won't allow me to be myself, right? I have to just be this pretend shell of a person in order to hang out with her, and I'm not willing to do that. So, you know, that's why we aren't talking. But she is an awesome person. I love my sister very much, as much as I have a bit of a grudge against her for allowing my mother to treat me the way she did, and for my sister to treat me the way that she did. But my sister was abused too, so my sister was doing to me what my mother did to me, so which was to treat me with very disrespectfully, with no dignity, and keeping me in a corner on the floor, you know what I mean, in the bedroom. Like I had this one tiny little corner in the bedroom. That's the only place I could go in the bedroom because me and my sister had to share a room. So I was not allowed to even step outside my boundary, my lines. She had me in a corner in the bedroom with no closet space, you know, like the whole time. And she was abusive towards me and used to beat me up, and you know, she used to tattle on me and get me in trouble at school. And she was not my friend. She was not my protector. She was my enemy. But we survived it, and you know, so you know, as adults, you know, I was kind of willing to overlook some of that stuff because I realized it wasn't her fault. She was abused as well. She didn't know what she was doing. She really didn't. She had no clue the damage that she was doing. So my mother didn't care what she was doing, but my sister had no real idea because she was abused as well. Everybody in my family was messed up, right? So we're not close. So the issue is I love her. She's a very nice person, and she allows people to walk all over her. She allows herself to be treated horribly by men. Every relationship she enters into is a mess because she doesn't know how to set boundaries. So that's her biggest problem, and I think that I'm still working on it. I'm still learning, but at least I have the ability to set some boundaries. But she doesn't know how to set any boundaries, so it's horrible. So they said here, next, observe what your standards and rules are for allowing a person to be an acquaintance, a friend, a close friend, or your nearest and dearest. Write these down. If your current relationships adhere to these rules or guidelines for getting close to you, then if you are experiencing discomfort or feelings of mistrust in a relationship, notice if that you may have allowed that person to get closer to you than is appropriate. So you can sort of check and see how you're feeling about each one of these people in these different categories. And you can think, well, this does make me uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And you can kind of see where they should fit into that. Should they just be an acquaintance? Should they be a friend? Should they be a close friend? Or should they be a nearest and dearest, right? But we do have to learn how to do this. And it says, by controlling your standards, you ensure that only those individuals who meet your needs for integrity, safety, trustworthiness will come close to you. And you control intimacy in relationships by what you are willing to disclose about yourself, and you can distance yourself if it is appropriate, right? This way you will prevent many unfortunate relationships and the attending heartache that goes along with them, right? So I'm not sure. I'll do my show on Saturday morning, but it'll have to be really early. So I'll still be on Saturday morning, and we'll take a look at changing negative conditioning in the past. And this is going to be really quite interesting. So I hope that you will go check this out, www.mudrashram.com, mudrashram.com/dysfunctionalfamily2, the number 2.html. You can read through here some good information. Have a great day, everybody. Take good care of yourselves. You know, get some help. If you can't cope and you're just feeling like, man, I just don't know, I don't have any friends, I don't know who to talk to and stuff, and there's nobody around, then you phone a crisis line, but you make sure that you stick around and you get some help. You know, I wish that my brothers would have done that, because they would still be here today. And so that's why it's so important for me. I like to make sure that I mention this on every show. because I wish that my brothers would have stuck around. I missed them, even though one of them was my sexually abused me. I loved my brother. I don't love what he did, and I think what he did was incredibly wrong, and I think he should have done time for it. But I still didn't want him to die. You know what I mean? And so, make the choice. You get yourself some help, right? I mean, if you can't cope and you're having a hard time, you have to make the right choice for yourself, and that is to get help and stick around and have a good life and enjoy and learn how to heal and work through this stuff. We certainly deserve it. We deserve so much better. Oh my God. And so, but it is up to us as adult survivors. We have to go get it. We're the ones that have to make these changes and make this happen. Nobody else can do it for us. It is ultimately up to us to get the ball rolling, and we have to do it ourselves. And it takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to reach out. And but it shows just how strong of a person really is when they do reach out for help, because it's hard to reach out for help. But once you do, you'll realize that there's so many people out there that do care and are willing to help because they've been there. They know what it's like. So have a great day, everybody. Talk to you real soon. I'll be back on my show tonight as well as Dreamcatchers Talk Radio this evening. So have a good day. Talk to you soon.